The year was 2145. Humanity had spread beyond Earth, building homes on Mars, Europa, and Titan. The United Earth Space Command kept peace across the solar system. Most people lived normal lives. They went to work, raised families, and rarely thought about what might exist beyond their small corner of the galaxy. Commander Natalie Ford stood on the bridge of the UESC Valiant, watching the stars. Her ship patrolled the outer edges of the solar system, looking for pirates, smugglers, and other threats. 12 years in space had taught her to expect the unexpected, but nothing had prepared her for today. "Commander, we're picking up an object at the edge of our sensor range," said Officer Ryan Green. His voice was steady, but Ford could see tension in his shoulders. "Natural or artificial?" she asked, walking to his station. "Definitely artificial. It's small, about the size of a car, and it's not moving like an asteroid." Green pointed to his screen where a small dot blinked. Ford nodded. "Wake up, Lieutenant Harris. Tell him to prepare a drone for close inspection." 30 minutes later, Ford and her crew watched the video feed from the drone as it approached the mysterious object. "It's definitely not one of ours," said Lieutenant Ben Harris. He was the ship's technology expert. "The design isn't human." The object was smooth and oval-shaped with no visible windows or doors. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a faint blue light. "Is it?" Officer Kelly Martinez didn't finish her question. They were all thinking the same thing. Ford took a deep breath. "Yes, I believe we're looking at alien technology. The first confirmed evidence of intelligent life beyond Earth." The crew fell silent. This moment would change human history forever. "The drone is 10 meters away," Harris said. "Radiation levels are normal. No signs off." A sudden flash of light filled the screen. When it cleared, the alien object was gone. "What happened?" Ford demanded. Harris typed frantically. "It self-destructed, but not before sending a powerful transmission toward deep space." "Did we record the transmission?" Ford asked. "Yes, Commander, but I can't make sense of it. It's not in any language or code I've ever seen." Ford stared at the empty space where the alien probe had been. "Send everything to Earth. Tell them this is priority 1. Back on Earth, Dr. Peter Clark sat in his lab at the Global Science Institute in Denver. For 3 days, he had barely slept or eaten. The alien transmission consumed all his attention. "You should rest," said his assistant, Sam Wright, placing a cup of coffee on his desk. Clark shook his head. "I'm close to something. The computer has identified patterns in the signal." Wright looked at the screens covered in strange symbols and waveforms. "Can you translate it?" "Not fully, but I've decoded fragments." Clark pointed to a series of symbols. "This sequence appears multiple times. I believe it's a warning." "A warning about what?" Clark turned to face Wright, his expression grave. "It says, 'Do not disturb the sleeping giants.'" Wright's eyes widened. "Are we the giants?" "No," Clark said quietly. "I think the message was about us, not for us. Someone out there was warning others to leave humanity alone." That night, as Clark finally slept, emergency alarms sounded across Earth's defense network. A massive object had appeared at the edge of the solar system, moving toward Earth at impossible speed. Humanity was about to learn why someone had warned the galaxy not to wake them up. 6 months after the probe incident, the massive alien vessel entered Earth's solar system. It moved slowly, as if trying not to appear threatening. The ship was beautiful in a strange way, with smooth curved lines that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. Every military base on Earth went on high alert. Fighter jets scrambled. Orbital defense platforms aimed their weapons at the visitor. But the alien ship made no aggressive moves. It simply stopped near Mars and waited. "They're broadcasting a message," said Officer Martinez on the bridge of the UESC Valiant. Commander Ford had been ordered to approach the alien vessel first. "Put it through," Ford said, straightening her uniform. A face appeared on the main screen. The alien looked almost human. except for golden skin that seemed to shimmer and eyes with diamond-shaped pupils. When it spoke, its words were perfectly translated into English. People of Earth, I am Ambassador Krell of the Sorelian Confederation. We come in peace and friendship. 24 hours later, Ford stood in a conference room at United Earth headquarters in Geneva. World leaders and military commanders filled the room. Ambassador Krell sat across from them, flanked by two other aliens. Your arrival has raised many questions, said President Eric Daniels. Most importantly, why have you come now? Krell nodded. I understand your caution. The truth is, humanity has been monitored for centuries by what we call the Galactic Council. Murmurs filled the room. Ford watched the alien carefully, looking for signs of deception. Your species was placed under a quarantine, Krell continued. Most spacefaring civilizations believe humanity to be too volatile, too aggressive to join galactic society. The Council voted to let you develop in isolation until you either matured or destroyed yourselves. Then why break this quarantine now? Asked General Maria Collins. Because your recent experiments with quantum communications breached the quarantine protocols, said Krell. And because another faction now knows of your existence. Dr. Peter Clark, who had been invited due to his work on the probe's message, leaned forward. The sleeping giants, that's what the probe's message referred to. Krell turned to him. You decoded the warning. Impressive. Yes, many species fear humanity's potential. The probe was sent by allies who wished to keep your existence secret. You mentioned another faction, Ford said. Who are they? Krell's expression darkened. They call themselves the Vex Dominion. While the Sorelian Confederation believes in cooperation and peaceful coexistence, the Vex believe in control and conformity. They see emerging species like yours as threats to be contained or eliminated. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Are they coming here? President Daniels asked. They are already on their way, said Krell. We came to warn you and offer our help. The Vex believe humanity should be eliminated before you expand beyond your solar system. General Collins stood up. We won't be eliminated by anyone. Earth has powerful defenses. Krell nodded respectfully. Your weapons are impressive for your technological level, but the Vex have been spacefaring for thousands of years. Then what chance do we have? Asked someone from the back of the room. There is something about humanity that the Vex fear, Krell said. Something that made the Council quarantine you instead of making contact. We don't fully understand it ourselves. Ford remembered the probe's message. Do not disturb the sleeping giants. Later that evening, as Ford looked out a window at the stars, Dr. Clark joined her. Do you think we can trust them? She asked. Clark shrugged. I don't know. But I've been thinking about that warning. What if it wasn't warning others about us? What if it was warning us about what's inside us? Before Ford could answer, alarms blared throughout the building. On every screen, a news alert showed several large ships appearing near Jupiter. The Vex had arrived. The Vex battle fleet hung in space near Jupiter, like a storm cloud made of metal. Their ships were angular and sharp, with no smooth edges or curves. They looked like weapons, built only for war. Admiral Susan Reyes stood on the bridge of the UESD Guardian, Earth's largest battleship. 5 other human ships flanked her vessel, forming a defensive line. Behind them, Ambassador Krell's Sorelian ship waited. They're hailing us, said Lieutenant Greg Porter. Reyes took a deep breath. On screen, the alien that appeared looked nothing like the golden-skinned Sorelians. This creature had gray skin that seemed to be made of scales. Its eyes were black and cold. When it spoke, its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. I am Traz, commander of the Vex Dominion's 3rd Fleet. You will power down your weapons and prepare to receive our terms. Reyes stood tall. This is Admiral Susan Reyes of United Earth Space Command. You have entered our solar system without permission. State your purpose or leave. Draz made a sound that might have been laughter. Brave words from a primitive species. We are not here to conquer your worlds. We are here to prevent a mistake. What mistake? Rise asked. The mistake of letting humanity spread beyond this solar system, Draz said. Our studies show your kind is too aggressive, too unpredictable. You would bring chaos to ordered space. Rise felt anger rise in her chest, but kept her voice calm. You've come to judge us without knowing us. That seems unfair. We know enough, Draz said. Here are our terms. Humanity will dismantle all space vessels capable of interstellar travel. You will cease all quantum communication experiments. You will return to your planet and stay there, under our watch. If you agree, you may live. If you refuse, we will remove the threat you pose. The bridge was silent. Rise looked at her crew's faces. They were afraid, but she also saw determination in their eyes. We need time to discuss your terms, she said finally. You have 24 Earth hours, Draz replied. The screen went black. Back on Earth, world leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. Ambassador Krell attended, offering advice and support. The Vex do not make empty threats, Krell warned. They have destroyed civilizations before. President Daniels looked around the table. Options. We fight, said General Collins immediately. We may not have their technology, but we have courage and determination. Fighting would mean millions dead, argued another leader. Perhaps we should accept their terms, at least temporarily. Dr. Alan West, head of Earth's Defense Technology Division, had been quiet until now. There's another option, he said softly. Everyone turned to look at him. Project Phoenix, he continued. It's experimental, but it might give us a chance. I ordered that project shut down, President Daniels said sharply. It was too dangerous. West nodded. Yes, sir, but we didn't shut it down completely. The core system is still functional. Daniels looked troubled. The risk is less than extinction, West finished. After hours of debate, Earth's governments voted. The decision was unanimous. They would reject the Vex ultimatum. They would not surrender their future. Admiral Rice delivered their answer to Commander Draz when the 24 hours were up. Humanity will not be confined to one world, she said firmly. We will not give up our right to grow, to explore, to reach the stars. Your terms are rejected. Draz's black eyes showed no emotion. Then you have chosen extinction. We will begin with your outpost on Mars. As the communication ended, Rise received a coded message from Earth. Phoenix rising. Hold position. In a secret facility deep beneath the Arizona desert, Dr. West activated a system that had never been fully tested. As power flowed into ancient machines, lights across Earth flickered. Something was awakening. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The attack on Mars colony came without warning. Vex ships appeared in the red sky like dark stars. They fired beams of energy that cut through buildings like they were made of paper. Alarms screamed as the colony's shields began to fail. Captain Jack Miller ran through the smoke-filled corridors of Mars Defense Station Alpha. His ship, the UESC Defiant, was docked nearby. If he could reach it, he might save some of the colonists. Captain, a young officer named Paul Jones, stumbled toward him. Most of the evacuation ships are destroyed. There are 5,000 civilians with nowhere to go. Miller grabbed Jones by the shoulder. The Defiant can hold 800 if we pack them in tight. Tell everyone to head to Docking Bay 3. We'll make as many trips as we can. But, sir, the Vex ships will have to catch us first, Miller said. Now go. As Jones ran to spread the word, Miller reached the command center. Screens showed the battle raging outside. The colony's few defense ships were being destroyed one by one. Status report, Miller demanded. Lieutenant Carla Bishop looked up from her console, her face pale. Shields at 12%. Most weapons are offline, and there's a Vex landing craft heading for the main dome. Miller made a quick decision. Transfer all power to the shields around the civilian sectors and Docking Bay 3. We're evacuating. For the next 2 hours, Miller and his crew worked frantically to load the Defiant with as many people as possible. Children cried. Parents held them close. Everyone knew that not everyone would escape. "That's all we can fit," said Miller's first officer, Frank Cooper. 823 people. Miller looked at the thousands still waiting. "We'll come back for the rest." The Defiant pulled away from Mars as the colony's shields finally failed. Miller watched from the bridge as Vex soldiers entered the domes. He turned away, focusing on the difficult flight ahead. "Plot a course through the debris field," he told Cooper. "We'll use the wreckage for cover." 3 Vex fighters spotted them and gave chase. The Defiant shook as enemy fire struck its engines. "We can't outrun them," Cooper said. Miller pointed to a cluster of destroyed ships ahead. "We don't need to outrun them. We just need to outsmart them." He took manual control of the ship and flew directly into the debris field. The Defiant barely squeezed between 2 large pieces of wreckage. The Vex ships, built for power rather than agility, couldn't follow. One crashed. The others pulled back. The Defiant limped toward Earth, carrying its precious cargo of survivors. Back on Earth, Lisa Garner sat in her office at Global Intelligence Headquarters. As Director of Intelligence, she had access to humanity's most closely guarded secrets. For the past 3 days, she had been searching through ancient files, looking for anything that might help against the Vex. What she found disturbed her deeply. "Dr. Clark is here to see you," her assistant said over the intercom. Moments later, Peter Clark entered her office. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. "You said it was urgent," he said. Garner nodded. "I found something in the deep archives, files that go back thousands of years." She turned her screen so he could see it. "This isn't our first encounter with the Vex." Clark stared at the ancient images on the screen. They clearly showed spacecraft similar to the Vex ships. According to the date, the images were over 50,000 years old. "That's impossible," he whispered. "Human civilization isn't that old." "That's what we've always believed," Garner said. "But these records suggest otherwise. And there's more." She pulled up another file. "Project Phoenix isn't new. It's the reactivation of something very old and very powerful." "What is it?" Clark asked. "A weapon," Garner said quietly. "Or more accurately, a key to unlock a weapon that's been inside us all along." The wind howled across the Antarctic ice as the small aircraft landed. Lisa Garner pulled her thick coat tighter around her body and looked at Peter Clark, who seemed just as cold. "Are you sure this place exists?" Clark asked, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. Garner nodded. "According to the old files, there's a facility hidden under the ice. It was built before recorded history." They trudged through the snow, following the coordinates on Garner's device. After walking for nearly an hour, they reached what looked like an ordinary ice field. "There's nothing here," Clark said. Garner pulled out a small metal object from her pocket. It was shaped like a disc with strange symbols carved into it. The files mentioned this key. It was found in ancient ruins in Egypt 500 years ago. She placed the disc on the ice. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the disc began to glow with a blue light. The ice beneath their feet rumbled and started to split open, revealing a dark passage leading down. "After you," Clark said nervously. They descended into darkness. As they moved deeper, lights automatically switched on, revealing a tunnel made of a strange black metal. The walls were covered with symbols similar to those on the disc. "This technology isn't human," Clark whispered. "At least, not human as we know it." At the end of the tunnel, they entered a vast chamber. In the center stood a pillar of light that reached from floor to ceiling. Around it were what looked like sleeping pods, hundreds of them, arranged in circles. Garner approached one of the pods and wiped away dust from its surface. Inside was a human-like figure, perfectly preserved. It looked like it could be sleeping. "Who are they?" Clark asked. "According to the files, they are us," Garner said. "Or rather, what we used to be." She walked to a control panel near the central pillar. It lit up at her touch. Images appeared in the air above it, showing stars, planets, and spaceships. 50,000 years ago, humanity wasn't primitive, Garner explained as she studied the images. We were an advanced civilization that had spread to many stars. We fought a war against the ancestors of the Vex. Clark looked around the chamber in awe. What happened? We were losing, Garner said. So our ancestors created a weapon of last resort, something that would change the course of the war, but at a terrible cost. She touched another part of the panel. New images appeared, showing human DNA structures being modified. They changed themselves, Clark realized. But how does that help win a war? They didn't just change their bodies, Garner said. They changed their minds. They gave themselves abilities beyond normal physics, powers that could destroy fleets with a thought. Clark looked skeptical. If that's true, why don't we have these powers now? Because using the weapon had consequences, Garner said grimly. It burned out most of their civilization. The survivors decided to reset humanity, to start over as primitive beings. But they left the potential locked in our DNA, dormant but intact, passed down through generations. She pointed to another image, showing a device similar to what Dr. West had activated with Project Phoenix. This was the key, she said, a way to unlock those dormant genes if the Vex ever returned. Clark looked at the sleeping figures in the pods. Are they alive? In a way, Garner said. I think they're templates preserved to help guide us if the weapon was ever needed again. As they stood there, Garner's communication device beeped. She answered it and listened, her face growing pale. The Vex have destroyed our lunar base, she told Clark. They're preparing for a full assault on Earth. Clark looked at the central pillar of light. Then we need to wake the giants. As if in response, the light pulsed brighter. Throughout Earth's military bases, soldiers began to experience strange headaches. Something was changing inside them. Major Steve Fletcher was in the middle of a briefing when the headache hit him. It started as a dull pain behind his eyes, then spread until his whole head felt like it was on fire. He gripped the edge of the table, trying not to show weakness in front of his soldiers. "Sir, are you okay?" asked Sergeant Kate Wilson. Fletcher opened his mouth to answer, but no words came out. Instead, he heard voices, hundreds of them, all talking at once. He could hear the thoughts of every person in the room. He wasn't the only one affected. All across the base, soldiers clutched their heads and fell to their knees. Some screamed. Others simply stared into space, overwhelmed by new senses they couldn't understand. At a military hospital 50 miles away, Dr. Olivia Chen watched in amazement as brain scans of affected soldiers showed impossible activity. Areas of the brain that should be dormant were lighting up like Christmas trees. "This is spreading," she told her assistant. "We're getting reports from military bases worldwide. Always the same pattern. It starts with headaches, then enhanced abilities begin to appear." "What kind of abilities?" her assistant asked. Dr. Chen pulled up a video on her screen. It showed a soldier lifting a 2-ton truck with one hand. Another clip showed a female officer moving objects without touching them. "Strength, speed, telepathy, telekinesis," Chen said. "And it's spreading geometrically. The changed soldiers somehow trigger changes in others around them." At the United Earth headquarters, Admiral Rice sat with Ambassador Krell. The Admiral's eyes had changed color, shifting from brown to a brilliant gold. "You knew this would happen," Rice said. It wasn't a question. Krell nodded slowly. "We suspected. The old records spoke of humans as weapons. That's why the Galactic Council quarantined your species. They feared what would happen if humanity ever remembered what it once was." "And what were we?" Rice asked. "Your ancestors called themselves the Guardians," Krell said. "They possessed abilities that seemed like magic to other species. They protected younger civilizations from threats like the Vex. But the power came at a cost. It consumed them from within." Ray stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see soldiers training. Some were now moving faster than the eye could track. Others were communicating without speaking. "The Vex have taken Mars and destroyed our lunar base," she said. "Earth is next. We need to use these new abilities, whatever the cost." Krell looked troubled. "The cost may be your humanity itself." Reyes turned to face the alien. "If the choice is between losing our humanity and losing our existence, I choose the former." She left the room and went to the command center. Officers stood at attention as she entered. Many of them now had the same golden eyes she did. "The Vex believe we are weak," she told them. "They think we are primitive creatures they can easily destroy. It's time to show them how wrong they are." She outlined her plan. Operation Hellfire, a counterattack to retake Mars using their newly awakened abilities. The troops would be led by Captain Miller, whose mind now processed battlefield information at superhuman speeds. "We launch in 24 hours, Rice said. "Prepare your teams." As the officers left to carry out her orders, Dr. Clark entered the room. He looked exhausted but excited. "We've decoded more of the Antarctic archive," he told Reyes. "The changes are just beginning. As more humans awaken, the abilities will grow stronger. The final stage is something they called the Unity, a collective consciousness that can coordinate actions across vast distances." "How long before we reach this final stage?" Rise asked. "At the current rate of progression, 3 days, maybe 4. Rise nodded. "The Vex need to be dealt with before then. If we become what the archives describe, I'm not sure we'll still care about this war. We might have bigger concerns." "Like what?" Clark asked. Rise looked up at the stars visible through the command center skylight, like reshaping the galaxy itself. The Earth fleet approached Mars under the cover of a sensor-blocking field generated by their newly enhanced engineers. 50 ships moved in perfect formation, their crews linked by the growing telepathic network. At the front of the fleet, Captain Jack Miller stood on the bridge of the rebuilt UESC Defiant, his mind processing tactical data at impossible speeds. "Vex ships detected," said Lieutenant Jones. His eyes now glowed with the same golden light that marked all the awakened humans. "They've spotted us." Miller nodded. He didn't need the report. He could feel the Vex ships through his new senses. He could also feel the minds of the human prisoners on the Mars surface. Their fear and pain fueled his determination. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Miller ordered. The command traveled through the telepathic network instantly. The Earth fleet broke formation, moving with a coordination no computer could match. The Vex responded with energy weapons that had destroyed Earth's defenses easily just days before. But now, human pilots could sense the attacks before they happened. Ships twisted and turned, avoiding blasts that would have destroyed them earlier. Miller focused his mind and reached out to the other ship captains. Together, they created a mental picture of the battlefield that all could see. In this shared vision, the Vex ships appeared as red dots, Earth ships as blue, and the human prisoners on Mars as green. "Target their command vessel," Miller ordered. 5 Earth ships converged on the largest Vex ship, firing in perfect synchronization. Their weapons, enhanced by the engineers' new understanding of physics, cut through the Vex shields like they weren't there. On the Vex flagship, Commander Draz watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically taken apart by the humans. They moved in ways that defied normal tactics, almost as if they knew what his ships would do before they did it. "Impossible," he hissed. "They were primitives just days ago." His second-in-command looked up from a scanner. "Sir, their biology is changing. They're giving off energy readings similar to the Ancient Ones." Draz's scales paled. The Ancient Ones were figures of terror in Vex history. Beings of immense power who had nearly destroyed the early Vex Empire before mysteriously disappearing. "Order all ships to retreat," Draz commanded. "We must warn the Dominion." But it was too late. Earth ships had surrounded the Vex fleet, cutting off all escape routes. On the Defiant's bridge, Miller felt the fear in the Vex minds. He didn't enjoy it, but he understood its value. "This is Captain Miller to Vex Command," he broadcast. "Surrender your forces and release your prisoners, or be destroyed." Draz hesitated, his pride warring with his survival instinct. Before he could decide, Admiral Reyes joined the battle from Earth orbit. Unlike the other awakened humans, Reyes had progressed further in her transformation. Her physical body remained on Earth, but her consciousness now moved freely through space. She appeared on the bridge of every Earth ship simultaneously, her form glowing with golden light. The Vex have had their chance, her voice echoed in every human mind. She reached out with her thoughts toward the largest Vex cruiser. The massive ship shuddered, then imploded as if crushed by an invisible hand. The display of power sent shockwaves through the Vex fleet. One by one, they powered down their weapons. The battle for Mars was over almost as quickly as it had begun. As human troops landed to free the prisoners, an emergency signal raced across Vex communication channels to their homeworld. The message was simple: the giants have awakened. The Guardians have returned. In a distant part of the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Reports of the battle had reached them, carrying terrifying news. Humans were not just remembering their ancient powers, they were exceeding them. The council chair looked at the assembled representatives of 50 species. "We face a crisis unlike any in our history. The quarantine has failed. The weapons we feared most have been reactivated." A representative from a world near Earth spoke up. "Perhaps these new Guardians will be different from the old ones. Perhaps they will use their power wisely." "Perhaps," the chair said. "But we must prepare for the worst. The transformation is not yet complete." 3 days after the battle for Mars, the transformation reached its final stage. What the ancient records called the Unity swept through the awakened humans like a wave. Billions of minds connected in an instant, sharing knowledge, memories, and power. Commander Natalie Ford stood on the observation deck of the United Earth headquarters, watching the sunrise. Her body looked human, but her eyes shone with golden light that sometimes flickered with images of distant stars. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. Ford turned to see Ambassador Krell. "Yes," she said. "I can see colors I never knew existed before. And if I focus, I can see past the atmosphere to the stars beyond." She paused. "Is this what your people feared? That we would become this?" Krell nodded. The records of the ancient Guardians spoke of beings who could reshape reality with a thought. They protected many worlds, including my ancestors' homeworld, from threats like the Vex. But their power grew until even they feared what they might become. "That's why they chose to reset humanity," Ford said. "To start over as simple beings and evolve naturally." "Yes," Krell said, "but they left the key to their power hidden in your DNA, just in case it was ever needed again." A soft chime sounded. Ford closed her eyes briefly, receiving a telepathic message. "The Vex Dominion has sent a formal surrender," she told Krell. "Their leadership will arrive in 6 hours to sign the peace treaty." Krell looked surprised. "The entire Dominion, not just the fleet that attacked you?" "All of them," Ford confirmed. "After what Admiral Reyes did to their cruiser, and after seeing our transformation, they decided further conflict would be unwise." Later that day, Ford stood with Admiral Reyes and President Daniels as the Vex delegation entered the Grand Hall. The alien leaders moved cautiously, their eyes darting nervously to the glowing humans around them. Supreme Commander Vorax, leader of all Vex forces, approached the human delegation. His scales were darker than Draz's, marked with symbols of rank and age. "We offer our unconditional surrender," Vorax said, his voice flat. "The Vex Dominion acknowledges humanity's right to exist and expand. We ask only that you show mercy to our worlds." President Daniels, one of the few humans who had chosen not to undergo the transformation, stepped forward. "Earth accepts your surrender. We have no desire for revenge or conquest. All we ever wanted was to find our place among the stars." The peace treaty was signed without further discussion. As the Vex delegation departed, a new group arrived, representatives from the Galactic Council. The council chair, a tall being with blue skin and 6 eyes, approached Admiral Reyes. The council acknowledges that the quarantine of humanity was a mistake born of fear. We wish to establish peaceful relations with your kind. Reyes nodded. We accept your offer of friendship, but humanity will no longer accept restrictions on our development or movement. Of course, the chair said quickly. But if I may ask, what do you intend to do with your new powers? It was Commander Ford who answered. The same thing the original Guardians did. We will protect. There are threats in this galaxy that prey on younger civilizations, forces that bring chaos and destruction. We will stand against them. And who will protect the galaxy from you? The chair asked quietly. Ford smiled. We will. The unity gives us not just power, but understanding. We remember the mistakes our ancestors made. We won't repeat them. That evening, as Earth celebrated the peace, Ford met with Dr. Clark on the roof of the science building. What happens now? Clark asked. We've become something beyond human. Will we even care about Earth in 100 years? Ford looked up at the stars. She could feel the minds of billions of transformed humans, all connected, all part of something greater. But she could also feel their humanity, their loves, fears, hopes, and memories. We'll care, she said confidently. That's what makes us different from what the Guardians became before. They lost their connection to their origins. We won't. She pointed to a distant star. The Xorelians were right to warn others not to disturb humanity, but they didn't understand why. She smiled. The stars don't burn with destruction. They burn with potential, with hope, with life. And we'll be there to protect it all, Clark said. Yes, Ford agreed. That's what Guardians do.